Welcome to another TwinSpires Racing Roundtable. There's a lot to catch up on from a busy weekend in thoroughbred racing across the country. Nick Tamero here to take you through some of the highlights from a big set of stakes races that we saw coast to coast, joined by Vance Hansen and James Scully. Gentlemen, there's a lot to cover. Let's get right into it and touching on the Remsen Stakes that was run at Aqueduct on Saturday afternoon. It brought together a pretty competitive field of two-year-olds, a much larger group than we've grown accustomed to seeing, the entirety of them going a mile and an eighth for the first time in their careers. And it was Dornoch that we saw getting the job done in a bit of an interesting type of race where Sierra Leone made a huge move off the turn. Vance, I'm going to start with you. Dornoch, are you on board with this colt moving forward into the early part of 2024? And what did you think of his Remsen performance?
Yeah, I like the horse going into next season. Ran a very impressive race to come back and beat Sierra Leone after looking seemingly beaten in mid-stretch. The track admittedly was pretty speed favoring at Aqueduct in the mud on Saturday. I think that obviously helped Dornoch, but it also, when you take that into consideration, I think Sierra Leone arguably ran the better race of the two. I mean, he was dead last, conceding the leader more than a dozen lengths, made a sustained rally around the far turn, took the lead right before or right after lugging in a little bit, and then inexplicably idled late in the stages, and then gave up the ghost, and Dornoch came back and beat him by a nose. Both colts, I think, look pretty high quality going into next year, but I would give the edge based on the track dynamics that day and the move he made to Sierra Leone. We'll find out in the coming weeks and months if both of the horses have some immaturity issues, and I think we'll find out more about them if they grow out of them in time or not for the Kentucky Derby. James, what did you think?
Well, I, I thought the stretch drive of the Remsen left something to be desired, and I thought the Demoiselle winner had everything her own way on the best part of the track. Now, with that being said, Dornick and Sierra Leone and Demoiselle winner Life Talk are all remain promising prospects. I think we'll learn about whether they're legitimate Derby and Oaks types in their prep races next year, but that's not the kind of race I want to see. At least the Remsen isn't, for sure. I mean, Dornick did not switch leads on cue and upper stretch, drift in and hit the rail and lost momentum. And he's not going to get away with that crud moving forward. He's got to continue to mature and develop as such. And Sierra Leone, I mean, I don't know why he can't keep contact with the field. I was a little dismayed by how far back he was. It wasn't off track. It was his second start. Maybe he'll, show a little bit more ability positional wise in upcoming races. But when he struck the lead, he blew right by Dornick, looked like he was going to win by open lens. And I've seldom seen a horse shut it down completely like he did. It's either two things. He's completely out of gas, or it's just complete, like, green, immature behavior where he's doing it all on his own. We'll find out moving forward, but I'm not buying either one, any of those three horses off of those races Saturday, Nick.
Yeah, interesting. I think there's a couple of things I just wanted to touch on and get your respective opinions. One of the things that you mentioned, James, is that this was Sierra Leone's only his second start. And I mean, in all likelihood, he has a lot of room to move forward. The interesting thing about this crop, though, I guess we saw a little bit of this around a year ago when a horse named WHNL won the Remsen, which was that we knew we were dealing with a really good presumptive two-year-old champion in Forte. And we kind of know the same thing about this year because both Fierceness and a couple of his vanquished rivals from the Breeders' Cup Juvenile look very good and look very promising. So it might just be a question of these horses have a lot of catching up to do in order to get there. Are you willing to say perhaps something as simple as maybe a set of blinkers or just a little bit of experience? And presumably in his first start of 2024, could you potentially see enough from Sierra Leone to maybe walk that back a little bit and give him a little bit more opportunity?
Absolutely. And now, with that being said, I mean, Danny Gargan even said it after the race. This horse needs racing. He needs experience. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, there's like we got 6 months till the Derby. There's plenty of time for 3 starts, but since he's a stakes winner at 2, there's no chance he'll run in 3 preps. He'll only have 2 more starts. Maybe that will be enough, and the time between now and the spring will be enough for him to mentally move forward. But with Sierra Leone, he did that a little bit in his first race too, where he shut it down upon hitting the lead. So I'm more inclined to say that he just shut things down when he got about a length in front of Dornick in the stretch, and he can move forward significantly as a 3-year-old.
Yeah, I can see the same thing. Vance, you mentioned the track profile at Aqueduct on Saturday. Do you feel, and this is just part of a general handicapping conversation, are you willing to say, which I guess do you favor, the idea that Sierra Leone was squarely against the track profile, or that maybe with the help of the racetrack, Dornoch did set a pretty strong pace and put away his pace rival? Which one of the two would you find yourself, which opinion would you find yourself leaning towards?
I don't know if I could make a distinction between the two. I think they kind of both worked equally in the favor of both of those horses. I think the track profile perhaps aided Dornoch to an extent, and the track profile worked against Sierra Leone to an extent. One other thing I would mention about Dornoch, obviously he is a full brother to this year's Derby winner Mage. So and the dam is obviously throwing some very quality runners so far in her produce career. The one concern, in addition to his maturity issues that I have with Dornoch going forward, is that it sounds like Danny Gargan said he was going to point him for the Withers Stakes next time out. Now, traditionally, the New York Winter Trail to the Kentucky Derby has not been one that yields Kentucky Derby winners, and I'm slightly concerned whether Dornoch is going to get battle tested enough against some better, higher quality 3-year-olds if he stays in New York throughout the winter and into the spring.
I think that's a good
thing. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think
James.
that's a great point, because that he's basically saying he'd rather run him at 1.125 a little bit and in New York, and the Withers is in February, whereby he might be looking at a 2-race campaign where they're both 1.125 preps. Nick, the Fountain of Youth run at 1.16 at that short stretch at Gulfstream.
Yeah, it might be prudent to avoid a horse named Fierceness as well, if you can, at least early in the year. James, you mentioned the Demoiselle. Vance and I had not said anything about it yet, so we'll touch on it now. The Demoiselle was won in wire-to-wire fashion by Life Talk, who undoubtedly took advantage of the profile that Vance and I have both referenced from Saturday's racing at Aqueduct. What we know about Life Talk, not only now is she a Grade 2 winner, but she was a horse who was beaten pretty soundly by Just FYI in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. I felt like, if nothing else, this actually made me feel better about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies form. Did you think anything along those lines, Vance? And what was your takeaway from Life Talk's win?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It flatters Just FYI for sure. Todd Pletcher after the race said this filly, or he was always expecting this filly to be better with distance, and that could certainly be the case. I mean, he had Malathot and he had Nest win both the Demoiselle and go on to win champion 3-year-old filly honors. So I think this filly's got plenty of upside. She still has a gap to make up against some of the competition she lost to earlier in the fall. And yes, she did take advantage of the bias at Aqueduct on Saturday, but she was also a very heavy favorite there. So that's something also to keep in mind.
James, you were a little down on Life Talk. Any additional comments on that performance?
Well, I mean, I agree with the points you and Vance just made. I will say, though, I was surprised by how, it looked like Irad was only a jockey pushing their mount when they broke from the starting gate, and he got to the lead through she got to the lead through pretty soft fractions. So I don't think she's going to be running like that in the future. And one issue in both the Frizette and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies is she's making a little bit of a run where she basically just, you could say, hung. Maybe she didn't have enough to offer, etc. So I think her run style will be a little bit different moving forward.
James, I will not take the bait and comment on how jockeys rode the Demoiselle. So moving on to a couple of other spots that we wanted to touch on from the weekend. Then those came out west at Del Mar, where we saw the final two grade ones of the meet that were the Hollywood Derby on Saturday afternoon and the Matriarch on Sunday afternoon, both won by Chad Brown trainees, both the Klaravich Stables color bearers. The first of which was Program Trading, who got his second grade one of 2023, winning the Hollywood Derby. Did so holding off Webslinger, who he's now held off twice and who seems to run second or third in just about every start. Guys, what do you think of Program Trading, and what about his prospects in 2024? Vance, you first.
Program Trading has obviously done little wrong. I guess the one obvious knock so far is that Integration handled him pretty well in the Virginia Derby, and he went on to win the Hill Prince and looks like probably the number one older turf prospect going into next season. And maybe if you want to nitpick, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot separating Program Trading and Webslinger, and I kind of question whether Webslinger is going to be a top tier turf male next season. He's fairly well exposed at this point. I guess he's had a dozen starts already, 13 starts. So Program Trading, obviously a pretty good horse. I think they're probably aiming towards the Turf Classic on Kentucky Derby Day at Churchill Downs as kind of a return spot for him. So yeah, I think he's going to have a good season next year if he continues to progress. But as we all know, it's going to depend on, the European contingent by the end of next season, who comes over for the Breeders' Cup, and whether Program Trading can find a proper Breeders' Cup spot for himself. I don't know if he's going to cut back to a mile or try and stretch him out to a mile and a half. We're just going to have to see about that.
James, your thoughts on Program Trading?
I'm a lot more bullish on Program Trading than Vance is. This is a colt, didn't make his debut until mid-May. He won that Belmont Derby on the front end. I mean, he got the right trip in that race. I thought, he offered a nice turn of foot in the Virginia Derby, got run down by a better horse that day, but I thought he was even more sharp in the Hollywood Derby. I loved how he settled. I loved the turn of foot he showed, rallying from off the pace on Saturday. And if he's 4 for 5, to me, he and Integration are two of the most exciting 3-year-old turf horses we've had coming into their 4-year-old season in a while. I think Integration and Program Trading are both extremely promising, and I think they're going to both get nothing but better moving forward. So I came away very bullish on Program Trading. Surge Capacity has more to show me, but it was a nice win as well.
Fourth time Chad Brown has won the Hollywood Derby. What the other three all have in common is they subsequently won at least one grade one. That includes Domestic Spending, who got the job done back in 2020. Speaking of Chad Brown, and moving on to Sunday's featured event, the grade one Matriarch, Chad had 4 runners in the Matriarch, and he was pretty easy to spot where they finished 1, 2, 3, 4 with Surge Capacity, the 3-year-old filly, getting the job done. And I don't know about you guys, but I thought her run in the Valley View was really striking. She got totally stopped at the top of the stretch, lost some momentum, and then came back through along the inside. What she also clearly has the ability to do is race towards the inside. I don't necessarily want to call her a rail rat, but she's looking like one right now as a filly who's very comfortable inside of horses, and she got that trip under Joel Rosario. James, what did you think of Surge Capacity and her win in the Matriarch?
I mean, I did like it. I mean, she both. It's funny because both Surge Capacity and Program Trading are 4 for 5, and they both ran well in defeat. Surge Capacity got beat by a sprayed 2 starts previously. But I think she's really shown more in the Valley View, like you referenced, than in the Matriarch. I thought that was a really solid run to beat older horses in both spots. And, she's got a future moving forward. I mean, both the male and older female turf divisions, a little bit in flux. We'll see if an Italian retires. I don't think she's going to be back next season. And definitely Pletcher's horse, he's been retired off of that great second in the Breeders' Cup turf. So yeah, I like this. I like Program Trading better. I like him as a prospect better as a 4-year-old, but nothing wrong with Surge Capacity's effort, Vance.
Yeah, I'm actually more bullish on Surge Capacity just because she'll be facing turf filly and mare milers, and Program Trading will have a tougher division to deal with. But they're both pretty similar, as you alluded to. They both got their starts or their careers off to a late start this past spring and summer at Monmouth. They're both 4 for 5, but I give Surge Capacity probably a better chance to make a bigger impact in her division, perhaps. She seems the archetypal filly and mare turf miler that we've seen emerge from the Chad Brown barn for many years now. And she had a far less glamorous trip in the matriarch, buried on the inside. It took a long time for her to actually, find a place to run through. And then when she did, she really kicked on and to beat her stablemate Fluffy Socks. Now, beating Fluffy Socks, who's been rather wind shy during her career, perhaps isn't the most flattering of accomplishments. But again, there's a lot more room for Surge Capacity to get better. So I think she's going to be pretty solid, and I guess she's going to be pointing for the Jenny Wiley in April.
Yeah, fourth straight matriarch for Chad Brown, sixth overall. He is now 2 behind his mentor, Bobby Frankel, who won this race a record 8 times. This is the first time Chad's won it with a 3-year-old. Mainly, it's been older horses that he's gotten it done with. Horses like Regal Glory, Uni, ones that were maybe in the twilight of their careers, where a Surge Capacity is really just getting it started. So I guess the difference, guys, between these two, and I just say this sort of off the cuff, is that if the Gulfstream races are skipped, including the Pegasus Filly and Mare Turf and the Pegasus World Cup Turf, then both of their seasons will effectively start in April and May, which I think, is kind of what we've grown to expect with turf horses.
Yeah, and also one other thing I'd mention is Surge Capacity being a 3-year-old. I think she was the first 3-year-old to win the matriarch in a decade, and I think the first one since the race was moved from Hollywood Park to Del Mar. So the race itself in recent times hasn't been a very good fit for 3-year-old fillies, and the fact that she, overcame the recent history of the race speaks well for her.
James, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, you guys made some good points. I mean, it wasn't the toughest field, like Vance said, but the way she did it, bodes well for her.
Yeah, first 3-year-old filly to win in 11 years, as Vance alluded to. First time since the race was moved to Del Mar. Better Lucky for Tom Albertrani, the last 3-year-old filly to win this race. And of course, funny enough, Better Lucky came back 2 years later and nearly won the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. Pretty talented mare, Better Lucky. Well, guys, those are the races we wanted to cover, but there was a lot more that happened. Anything else you want to touch on from the weekend? James, I'll let you lead off.
I want to mention Hoist the Gold real quick. He led wire to wire, won the Cigar Mile by 4.5 lengths. Here's a horse that if you're handicapping him, you had to completely draw a line through his 3 California races in his last 5 starts. I used the Bristnet speed ratings. He had gotten in his last 5 starts, the 2 non-California races, he had earned his first triple-digit speed ratings of his career, winning those races, an allowance at Ellis Park at 7 furlongs, and then a very gutty win in the Phoenix. He had been working bullets for Dallas Stewart in preparation, and I just think the horse got a lot better this fall, this late summer, fall, but you had to be willing to just draw a line through those California starts. It doesn't bode well for him entering 2024 because the Breeders' Cup's at Del Mar, and to me, it's, he doesn't like California. I also mentioned El Capi real quick, and a very sharp, caught the eye, breaking his maiden at first, asking for Rick Dutro by 9.5 lengths. He's by McLean's Music. He's probably best known for siring Jackie's Warrior, sprint champion. But McLean's Music is the sire of Cloud Computing, the 2016 Preakness winner, and there's a lot of stamina in this female family. So El Capi could be a one to watch moving forward for Dutro. Got a triple-digit number from us, Vance.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Hoist the Gold myself, and that is a good point that you made about him drawing a line through those California races. We brought up the speed favoring nature of Aqueduct surface on Saturday, and I think to an extent with him than any other of the graded stakes winners on Saturday. I think that the profile, I think, aided him to a very strong degree. I think that field looked pretty well matched and evenly matched on paper going in, but he just blew the doors off of them. Senior Buscador, made a belated rally, but he was just too far behind. And Hoist the Gold, it just seemed to me that the track profile aided him a little bit more than it did some of the other graded winners on the card. It looks like the connections are taking a look at the Saudi Cup in February, which is a 1-turn mile-and-an-eighth race. Just based on what the profile was at Aqueduct on Saturday, I'd be reluctant to back him in the Saudi Cup, stretching out and then possibly running over a surface that won't play to speed as kindly, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment in my opinion. I'm not seeing this horse getting another furlong unless it's in some kind of extreme scenario. Now, a horse who I do think will get an additional furlong and might get an opportunity to do just that is Senior Buscador, who you mentioned, who finished second, who's likely targeting the Pegasus World Cup at a mile and an eighth down at Gulfstream. And he's a horse with a big one-run closing style. I mean, look, he's always going to be at the mercy of the pace, but a good, hard-trying horse like him in a handicap division that might not necessarily be particularly strong next year, I could see a grade 2 out there with Senor Buscador's name on it. He's already a graded stake winner, having taken the San Diego in 2023. None of us, we didn't bring up the Cigar Mile. Of course, I think all of us had in our own notes to bring it up during our additional portion of the conversation. One thing I did want to say about Hoist the Gold, and congratulations to the connections. I love the job done by Dallas Stewart and specifically John Velasquez to really take full advantage of that horse's early speed. And you know, a lot of us harp on it over and over. When you have a horse with speed, you're talking about dirt racing, use it. Right? Use it or lose it. Because if you don't use it, you're never going to find out what can happen. This is a horse that I think if you told any one of us 6 months ago, hey, this guy's going to go wire to wire in the Cigar Mile and speed favoring fast track or not, he's going to go a 45, sub 45 half, we would have laughed. So good for them to really figure out what unlocked this horse, and hopefully some decent enough days ahead. Guys, any closing thoughts to end this racing roundtable? Vance, you first.
None for me. I'll pass it along to James here.
I'm excited to see Oaklawn open on Friday. I look forward to these tracks opening. I enjoyed seeing Turfway. I've been following their races, turf racing back at Gulfstream. We got Oaklawn on this Friday. And then, of course, day after Christmas will be a big day for racing as well at Santa Anita. So that's sort of what I'm looking forward to coming up, Nick.
Very much Horse Players Christmas, December 26th, and Oaklawn gets started on Friday. Be sure to follow along and play at TwinSpires.com. Gentlemen, thanks so much. For James Scully and Vance Hansen, Nick Tamero here. Until next time, best of luck.